Number 10. Water hemlock. We're starting off today's list with a flower that is one of the most poisonous in the Western Hemisphere. As long as you don't ingest this bad boy, you should be fine. Although I don't recommend playing around with it. That's basically juggling a loaded handgun that's always pointed at yourself. If you do for whatever reason eat this thing, you can get ready to say goodbye. The poison will mess you up really bad. You'll be dead from either your heart stopping or from lung failure before you know it. I think the worst part about this is actually how cute it is. It actually looks nice, like something you could put in your garden or put in a bouquet. I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you're some sort of psychopath who leaves around bouquets for unsuspecting women and then they take the bouquet thinking it's a secret lover and then the bouquet actually kills them. I think I just thought of a new episode of Criminal Minds. Number 9. Rosary peas. Such a nice name for something that can kill you in such a brutal way. Deadly plants shouldn't be named like rosary peas, they should be named like death flower or apocalypse berries. Well, rosary peas are from India and they are pretty easy to identify by the bright red seeds. Now these seeds are bright and red for a reason. They're a huge warning. Like your buddy sending you a disturbing internet video and right before you open it, something pops up and says don't watch this or it's going to ruin your life, but you watch it anyways and then it ruins your life. Well, if you ever see rosary peas, please stay away. Just one of them has enough arbine to kill you, and it won't kill you in a nice way either. You won't die from having your heart stop like the water hemlock. That sounds like a dream compared to this. You start getting massive diarrhea and then puking and then internal bleeding until you finally die. Also, there's no antidote, so sleep tight. Number 8. Deadly Nightshade. Deadly Nightshade would for sure be my caped vigilante name. I would run around in the dark beating the hell out of criminals. I would get the name because I would throw a black sheet over them and then beat them up with a bat.
Cape in the boots.
No capes.
And then of course I would whisper, Nightshade. Well, Deadly Nightshade is one of the most deadly plants on the planet. It grows in some areas of Africa, Asia, and Europe. It's so deadly that just one leaf can put a full-grown adult 6 feet under. It also goes by the name Belladonna, because in the 14th century, women would use the berries to dilate their pupils and look more attractive. They would get super high and be like, "Do you think I'm pretty?" Number 7. Bleeding tooth fungus. This one looks like it's pulled straight out of a horror movie. The name perfectly describes the look of this horrible little mushroom. It has a white puffy exterior with strange red fluid that oozes out of it. They kind of look like some sort of fruit snack that Gushers would make, and if you eat it, your head would turn into a giant pussy mushroom and all your friends and family would run away in terror.
Every Gushers piece is bursting with fruity juice.
Even though these things look like a giant fruit snack, please don't eat them. They have an antibiotic in them that can make you extremely sick. Also, I don't think we should just be picking random things up off the forest floor and then eating them. I know that used to work and that's how we used to survive, but now we have Costco. Trust in Costco. Number 6. The castor plant. I don't know if you guys have heard of ricin, but it's super deadly and the castor plant is chopped full of it. This plant is so poisonous that it can kill a full-grown person in just 4 seeds. It'll take about 2 days to finish the job and the road is going to suck. The entire 2 days is basically going to be waiting in bed rolling around until you die. Also, there's nothing you can do to save you. You're basically just helpless laying there. It's like when you're super hungover and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna die, but this time you actually die. Ricin was the poison that Walter White wanted to use in Breaking Bad. I'm pretty sure he was trying to assassinate someone or something like that. I don't want to give you too much info on the show because I don't want to spoil it for anyone, even though you've all had your chance to watch it. Number 5. Tobacco. Yeah, I know it's not the kind of deadly we usually have on this kind of list, but let's be honest, tobacco kills more people than almost anything on the planet. Tobacco is like the world heavyweight champion at beating the hell out of your lungs. This grandfather to the jewel is apparently responsible for over 1 million deaths, and of course it's linked to several types of cancer. It also has the wonderful chemical nicotine, which is super addictive. Personally, I've never smoked a cigarette, but I do have a lot of friends who do, and I know how addictive it is because I know how many times they've told me, I'm quitting, trust me, I'm quitting, I'm trying to quit right now, I'm gonna quit, like I'm quitting, I'm done. Tobacco is also crazy because it's the most prevalent drug among young adults. It just never really appealed to me. When it comes to drugs, I'm gonna stick with like fats and carbohydrates and sugars. Those are the kind of things I love. thank you very much. Number 4, oleander. We got another cutie on the list. Man, why do they have to make these killer plants so damn cute? I mean, look at this thing. It's pink. It's not even like a bad pink. It's like a nice pink, like a soft pink that would complement my skin tone very nicely. That's one of the things that makes this plant so dangerous. Because it's such a little cutie patootie, people often use it as decoration. But if you were to eat any part of this plant, you would be 100% dead for sure. No exceptions. Just breathing in the smoke from it being burned is enough to put you in an early grave. In some places it's known as ass killer because before you die, you let loose. Big time poo-poo everywhere. That's the last act before you are judged by God. Number 3, death cap. Most mushrooms are actually super healthy for you. They can be used in all sorts of medicines, and they make Mario super jacked like he's been on a 12-week cycle of roids so he can get buff enough to slam dunk in the next Super Mario Sports spin-off. But this one will leave you feeling not so powerful if you ever have the misfortune of eating it. The death cap is quite possibly the most poisonous mushroom out there, and the toxins inside are very durable. Even cooking the mushroom at a high temperature won't break down the fungus's deadly qualities. If you're one of the unluckiest people around and you ingest this murderous forest dweller, then the following will be waiting for you. First, you're gonna barf. Then you're gonna have some wicked diarrhea, followed by your kidneys and liver and nervous system failing, and finally either coma or death. Wow, a lot of great options. Number 2, porcupine tomato. This one actually reminds me of those plants from the original Jumanji movie. It has these long spiny vines that are just out there to kill you. This thing can stretch up to 8 feet tall and 8 feet wide. That's like Shaq squared. This thing will spread very fast, so if it starts growing on your property, you should probably kill it with fire before it gets out of control. This thing will make your home its host, and you'll be stuck in there hoping some brave Uber driver will work his way through the brush just to drop off your tacos.
No capes.
But unless you live in Madagascar, I wouldn't worry about it. It only grows there, so it's Zabumafoon's problem and not yours. The poison is in the sharp spines that poke off its tentacle-like branches. Anyone who would poison themselves just to taste a tomato should be put on some sort of watch list. That person just creeps me out, or you just need like a better hobby, not tomatoes. And number 1 on our list is Fraxinella. This plant has worked its way all the way to number 1 because of its deadly effect on the body and how much the delay is. It hits you like an edible that you ate before work, and it was way too powerful. Now you're stuck at work trying to not have a panic attack and stare at the whole office. If you touch this plant, you won't feel anything right away. It might take a day or 2 before the effects kick in, but once it does, you'll know. Wherever your skin made contact with the plant will start to burn and you'll feel weak and nauseous. Fraxinella is also called burning bush or gas plant because of its effect on your skin, and this one also looks so darn cute you might want to plant it in your garden. It's just like dating. It's always the cute ones that give you the most trouble.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have strychnine. This tree is most commonly found in Southeast Asia and is notorious for being a deadly tree. It was surprising to find out that rather than some chemical lab, this tree is actually the source of the poison strychnine, which is commonly used as a pesticide. The tree looks fairly ordinary with its thick leaves, but it's the dark and plentiful seeds where the poison really lies. If a human were to ingest the seed, symptoms would start to present themselves like eye pain, dizziness, muscle cramping, heavy tongue, and even paralysis. This plant is extremely toxic, but scientists have actually been able to find a way to use it in a beneficial way in cancer treatments. So I guess what I'm saying is that this is a good one to stay away from unless you're a medical professional who knows exactly what you're doing. In our number 9 spot today, we have the stinging tree. This tree is found in Australia and is full of extremely painful stinging hairs. The pain is apparently so debilitating that people have been known to take their own lives just to get it to stop. The pain can last anywhere from hours to months on end, especially if one of the hairs is unknowingly left behind. Apparently there have even been cases of the pain lasting for years, and some people have even lost visual function after notably bad encounters with the tree. The toxic chemicals found in this plant are enough to be fatal to both animals and humans, and while the most common symptom of contact with the tree is the unbearable pain, it is good to know that death can also occur. In our number 8 spot today, we have the common yew. This tree is native to the British Isles, Europe, North Africa, and West Asia, and of course, like most of the other trees on this list, it is highly poisonous except for a few parts. The wood from this tree has been used since ancient times for many things, such as archery products, because of its dull needled and flexible wood. The leaves and berries of this tree are the most toxic parts, however. The flesh of the berry itself is not toxic, but the seeds inside are the most toxic of the entire tree. If the flesh isn't cut from the seed carefully enough, it can be lethal. Even if a branch and leaves have been cut from the tree, they do not lose their toxicity, so this is a tree that people and animals should always be cautious around. At the moment, there is no cure for poisoning from this tree, but there are some ways that people have found to successfully treat the symptoms. In our number 7 spot today, we have angel's trumpets. These small trees get their name from the flowers they produce, which make it look like a warm and inviting tree, but that is not the case at all. These trees are among the most toxic of all ornamental plants, which is not something that should be taken lightly. All parts of this plant are poisonous, but the seeds and leaves are definitely the most dangerous. These plants contain quite a few tropane alkaloids, and the ingestion of them can create several terrible symptoms. Those would include paralysis of smooth muscles, confusion, tachycardia, dry mouth, diarrhea, migraines, visual and auditory hallucinations, unusual dilation of the pupils, rapid onset paralysis of an eye muscle, and then, of course, we have death. Ingesting this plant can induce an extremely powerful trance, and people are completely unaware of their hallucinations and unable to tell what's reality and what's not. Some people do choose to use this toxicity for fun, but I cannot say I understand why, as the hallucinogenic effects of this plant has been described as, quote, terrifying rather than pleasurable. In our number 6 spot today, we have the corpse flower. This flower is a deep green on the outside and a beautiful burgundy color on the inside, and it also features the largest unbranched inflorescence in the world. Both male and female flowers grow inside of the same inflorescence, but the females bloom first, with the males following in a day or two, which usually prevents the flowers from self-pollinating. These plants usually require about 7 to 10 years before the initial blooming period, and after that, the blooming tends to be fairly sporadic. Some will take another 7 to 10 years, and some are able to bloom every other year. As the flower blooms, it is around human body temperature, which allows for its scent to be quite prominent, which you think would be nice. And at this point, you're probably thinking, can Olivia just get to the point and tell me why this is a flower that is so terrifying? Well, apparently this flower got its nickname because it smells like a rotting corpse. Yeah, lovely. These odors, however, are super helpful to the plant, as it allows it to attract pollinators, which are usually insects that like to feast on rotting flesh. So I guess while the scent is unbelievably unpleasant to humans, at least there are creatures that are more helpful to this flower that actually enjoy it, which I guess is probably for the best. In our number 5 spot today, we have the coyotillo bush. These guys are just a little shrub that is usually seen growing along the border of Texas and Mexico. The small green flowers the shrub grows produce a green fruit that will eventually ripen to a deep purple color, which has a sweet and juicy pulp. Despite these berries looking great and not really tasting too bad either, apparently, not from personal experience, they will actually cause paralysis shortly after being ingested. These berries are actually responsible for a lot of poisonings in rural northern Mexico, because how could something that looks so good be so dangerous? The paralysis doesn't set in all at once, and it starts in the extremities before slowly making its way to the trunk, and sometimes people who have ingested the berries even need medical assistance to be able to breathe. To make matters a little bit worse, as if this wasn't already bad enough, there isn't really a treatment for this poisoning, and while many people thankfully see the effects of it just wear off on their own, in more serious cases, some people never see the paralysis disappear. In our number 4 spot today, we have the tamboti tree. This tree is a widespread tree that is usually found along the east coast of South Africa, across the Kruger Park area and into Zimbabwe. This tree usually grows to be around 10 meters in height and features small leaves with rough gray bark. These trees are actually a protected species because of their unsustainable overuse of their wood. While this tree is poisonous to humans, it's not poisonous to animals, which is always a relief, and rather than a seed, a nut, or a fruit containing the poison of this tree, instead it is a milky latex sap that the tree produces. Even something as simple as plucking at the leaves can cause the sap to be released, which will cause burning. The wood from this tree shouldn't be burned either, as the smoke will become poisonous, and if it were to get in your eye, it could cause temporary or even permanent eye damage. Inhaling the smoke or the sap can cause stomach issues as well. The sap has been used for years by indigenous tribes for many different things, so unless you're one of these people or you're one of the animals that feeds on this tree, it's probably just best to to leave them alone. In our number 3 spot today, we have water hemlock. Water hemlock is closely related to poisonous hemlock, which is commonly known as what killed Socrates, and anything that is closely related to something with the word poisonous in the name probably is something to just stay away from. Water hemlock has also been deemed the most violently toxic plant in North America, so I feel like knowing those two things is enough to just concede on ever needing to be anywhere near this plant. This plant actually belongs to the carrot family and can sometimes appear a little too closely to parsnips and celery, which obviously would provide quite a dilemma. This plant is infused with sucotoxin, especially in the roots, and after consuming this plant, the potentially deadly symptoms will start to appear quite quickly. The symptoms include things like painful convulsions, abdominal cramps, and nausea, and unfortunately most people who consume water hemlock end up passing away. There are people who have survived, however, but those who do are usually left dealing with amnesia or lasting tremors. In our number 2 spot today, we have the sandbox tree. This tree belongs to the evergreen family and is usually found in the tropical regions of North and South America, which includes the Amazon rainforest. This tree can be easily recognized by the many dark pointy spines that it has on the trunk, which is probably a good defense mechanism, but this tree has a much more dangerous trait that was kind of surprising to learn about. Firstly, this tree has poisonous sap that is corrosive and will cause burns to your skin. This is another one of those saps that has been used by indigenous tribes to poison the tip of their arrows before hunting. Very cool. Here's the surprising thing about this tree though. The fruit of this tree, of course, starts out small, but it grows, and once it ripens, it literally explodes with so much force, it's extremely dangerous to be around when this happens. These trees are also commonly called dynamite trees because of this, and it has been well documented that for humans or other animals in the area of this exploding fruit, they can be seriously injured by the flying shrapnel. In our number 1 spot today, we have the manchineel tree. This tree is one of the most dangerous on today's list. In fact, it's so dangerous that standing underneath it while it's raining is enough to feel its toxic effects. This tree is actually endangered and is found on the Caribbean coasts. The tree grows an apple-like fruit and is actually very similar to an apple tree with one painfully obvious difference. The tree and its fruit both contain the necessary chemicals in order to make a toxic mixture, and any human contact with the tree can lead to painful burns, but ingestion of the fruit can be lethal. Like I mentioned before, something as simple as standing under the tree while it rains is enough to cause skin rashes and burns, or if this contaminated rainwater were to get in your eye, or perhaps smoke from the burning of the tree's wood, it could result in lasting ocular damage. I think it's probably this tree's way of saying it would just like to be left alone.
First up on this list, in at number 10, we have the bleeding tooth fungus. Do I really need to explain this one? I think the name itself is self-explanatory. One look at this fungus and you'll really understand immediately why this is on the list. This little white mushroom has pores that oozes a thick red liquid, making it look like as if it's like bleeding. This mushroom isn't poisonous, despite its disgusting and unsettling appearance, but apparently it tastes like a bitter pepper, so maybe we shouldn't start eating this plant. Filling our number 9 slot, we have voodoo lily. This flower can range in color from a peachy pink to a deep burgundy, and it can grow up to 9 feet tall. While the plant itself can be beautiful, well, I wouldn't recommend you guys get too close to it, because it gives off a scent of a rotting corpse. Apparently, the stench helps to attract flies and bugs to aid it in its pollination. It's also apparently edible as well. But just because you can eat it doesn't mean you should eat it. Our next up, number 8, is one that you may have already heard of, and we're talking about the belladonna, also referred to as the deadly nightshade. Literally every single part of this plant is poisonous to some degree. Eating just a tiny amount of its leaves or sweet juicy berries can be fatal to humans, and even touching it can irritate the skin. But despite all of that, it's actually used in a lot of medicines today. It's used as eye drops at the optometrists to dilute your eyes. And it can also allegedly help with inflammation, colds, sore throats, and more. It's usually safe to use if prescribed by a doctor if it's done properly, but it isn't FDA regulated, so I wouldn't recommend randomly self-medicating with this deadly nightshade. I mean, come on, the name itself is something you should avoid. Deadly nightshade? Are you kidding me? And at number 7, we have a Montroopa uniflora, or let's just call it the ghost plant. This is one type of plant that does not need or even want sunlight to grow. I mean, who are you? It gets its name because its pale white color and its hunched over appearance. It often grows in clusters, so it can look like a gathering of sad ghosts. Due to its lack of chlorophyll, it thrives in dark forests, which it can grow amongst rotting leaves and dead tree trunks, and when you pick it up, it almost immediately turns black. Coming in at number 6, we have the octopus stinkhorn. I mean, I'm not the one naming these people. Okay, so technically this one is a fungus and not a plant, but it's also too creepy looking not to include on this list. When it starts growing, it has 7 reddish arms that are connected at the ends, which slowly spread apart into sorts of like these twisty tentacle things, and it has these dark green stuff called a gleba on it. When it's fully grown, this fungi, much like the voodoo lily that we talked about, it smells like rotting flesh. Next up, number 5 is the snapdragon. I'm sure a lot of you guys might have heard of this one. When this plant is alive and vibrant, its colorful petals resembles the head of a dragon, hence the name snapdragon. But when it dies and dries out, the withered remains reveal what looks like to be a skull. Is this real life right now? And it has gaping holes where the eyes and mouth would normally be on a person or dragon. The stark contrast in its 2 different forms made it resemble deception and presumption in the Victorian era. It isn't poisonous or anything, but I feel like it looking like a skull must mean that it has some pretty bad vibes attached to it. And at number 4, we have a plant with a name that makes my stomach turn a bit. Okay, who are we kidding? It makes my stomach turn more than just a bit. Well, this plant we're talking about is called the devil's guts plant. This plant is a type of vine and is pretty much the definition of a parasitic. Its thin, leafless stems spread and grow and wrap themselves around any other plant in their way, strangling them and stealing their nutrients, just killing them off, killing off the competition. They're so invasive that you can find them forming entire blankets over top of other plants. They can even transmit diseases between one plant to another, which makes it easier for them to feed off of them. Taking number 3 slot is the dragon's blood tree. Yes, there's another plant that bleeds, or rather looks like it's bleeding. This tree gets its name from the crimson red sap that oozes out of its trunk. Yeah, remember the tree of death from Johnny Depp's movie Sleepy Hollow? It was a little bit ago, it was years ago. Well, it kind of looks like that. That's what it reminds me of. This sap apparently can act as an anti-inflammatory though, and the dye that it has been used in lipsticks and other makeup products as well. The sap even allegedly has magical properties and has been used to improve spells used in rituals. Number 2 slot goes to the black bat flowers. This creepy looking whiskered flower, believe it or not, belongs to the same family that yams come from. Yeah, I'm talking about like those sweet potatoes. This plant gets its name from its large dark colored leaves that resembles the wings of a bat and long branches sticking out of it looking like a bat's whiskers. Regardless of if you're scared of bats, it is a bit disconcerting for a flower to look like it could be hanging upside down in a cave. And closing off this list, in at number 1 we have the angel's trumpet. This one sounds kind of triumphant and beautiful, right? Well, you'd be absolutely wrong. While it is a beautiful plant with large hanging yellow, white, or pink flowers, exposure to any part of it is anything but lovely. It can cause dramatic side effects including migraines, diarrhea, confusion, hallucinations, paralysis, and even death. Some people take their chances and drink tea made from its leaves though. I don't know why, but maybe because of its hallucinogenic properties. I mean, think about it. I think I'm just gonna pass on this one, and you know what? I'm not a tea drinker. And it might be for this reason.